Hello and welcome to the Beyond Biotech podcast, and this is number 30. And this week's podcast is sponsored by Bionter. Bionter is a Swiss-based premier supplier of analytical testing solutions to support pharma companies to bring drugs faster and safer onto the market. Their first product is a fully automated particle testing device for parenteral drug applications that is cost-efficient and compliant with current regulations. If you want to know more, go to www.bionter.com. I'm Jim Cornell from Labiotech, and it's been another very busy week, which might be a good thing. This time last week, I was in Belfast as I made a quick overnight trip to Northern Ireland. It was my first time there, and I've been to some windy places in my time, but the wind there was incredible, although obviously it's not like that all the time. But a very cool place with a lot of history, some of it related to the Titanic, and really great people, very friendly and helpful. I went into one store because they had Northern Ireland flags, and my son collects flags, and the store owner actually gave me the flag. So overall, I totally enjoyed the trip, other than falling in the city centre and banging up my knee. Well, it was Friday the 13th, I guess. Anyway, I did 2 interviews, one at Fion and another at Queen's University, so that's 2 videos to create over the next few days, hopefully. In other news, the podcast had its 10,000th download on Buzzsprout this week, and that doesn't include other places you can listen to Beyond Biotech, so it's more than that in reality. And I promise that those 10,000 weren't just me downloading it every 10 seconds. But right now we're concentrating on this week's podcast, and we have 4 guests. We have conversations with Jessica Robinson, Project Director for the Advanced Therapies Congress, which is put on by Terrapinn, Tobias Werk, CEO of Bionter, Asaf Zviran, CEO and co-founder of C2i Genomics, and Magali Bischof, Secretary General of BioAlps. And we also have the return of our weekly commentary from Travis McCready at global commercial real estate services company JLL. So now it's time for the news you may have missed over at Labiotech.eu. TTP spin-out Cellular Origins will focus on cell and gene therapies. Everimmune launched a trial for its oncobiotic lung and kidney cancer drug candidate. And Maltus Biotechnology raised $9.5 million to bring cultivated meat closer to price parity. Poolbeg expanded its POLB001 drug into the oncology space. A new Colombian food tech acceleration program includes startups in the first consort, and we had an article on how cell and gene therapies are gaining momentum in Basel in Switzerland. Another article was a question: is Copenhagen the world capital of life science? I'm sure plenty of arguments over that one. We had an article on funding for an industry-first cancer screening technology, and BioInvent received funding for its blood cancer treatment. You can read how innovation in life sciences requires collaboration and community. Hundreds of genetic discoveries have been made because of the FinGen study, and GPCR Therapeutics launched a multiple myeloma trial. Hopefully you're not eating breakfast or lunch, because a cloned maggot enzyme wound treatment is moving closer to reality. We had an article on the magic microbiome, and a new drug could replace the current standard for treating brain cancer. You can read all of these and plenty more at Labiotech.eu. So first up this week is C2i Genomics, a cancer intelligence company which recently announced an extension of a collaboration with AstraZeneca. The 2 companies have collaborated to evaluate the potential of whole genome minimal residual disease testing across solid cancers, with the goal of enhancing oncology treatment, supporting clinical trial recruitment and monitoring. So to tell us all about that is Asaf Zviran, CEO and co-founder of C2i Genomics.
And a bit of a background about me and basically how we came to the idea of C2i Genomics. So actually my background is starting from engineering and science, and actually the Israeli high-tech and defense sector, early education in electrical engineering and physics, second degree in applied mathematics, worked for almost 8 years in developing defense systems for the Israeli Army and Navy. And at some point, I was a cancer patient and actually went through that journey with a couple of relatives. And as someone that developed military decision support systems, and then doing a lot of discussion with oncologists and trying to ask them like the simplest question of how do you know if the treatment is working? How do you know if it's if we need to move to another treatment? Or after the end of standard of care, do we know if it's going to come back or not? And mostly the answer, well, we don't know. We just need to wait and see. And for me, basically, it showed that there is a strong gap, and basically many of the opportunities that we have to use drugs to create cure are missed, not because of the drugs, but because we are actually not able to use them in a smart way. We're not able to know if it's working or not working. So actually, I decided to completely change my path. After a lot of experience in engineering, I moved to do a PhD in molecular biology. And C2i is basically a spin-off of work that I did with my supervisor at that time, Dr. Dan Landau at the New York Genome Center in Weill Cornell.
In terms of what you do, could you explain maybe a bit about minimal residual disease?
So C2i Genomics is really addressing that need that I have seen as a patient of really how can we guide data-driven decisions? How can we support the physician and the patients and really measure from simple blood tests? So take simple blood collection, we actually need very low volume, like less than half of a tube of blood. And from that, be able to detect in very, very high sensitivity, detect cancer or cancer DNA, tumor DNA that is floating in the blood, and even to count them. Even we can basically say if the amount of tumor is growing or decreasing in real time in order to guide treatment decision, and also to basically detect if patients have risk of recurrence. So at the point that the physician did surgery, did treatment, based on the protocol, the patient should go to surveillance, basically should wait to see what happens. We can actually detect patients that still have tumor DNA in their blood, meaning that they have high risk of recurrence. And now actually C2i is engaging in large interventional clinical trials on trying to escalate immunotherapy in different locations in the globe. One of our largest studies in France, actually, in Paris with Gustave Roussy, in uni cancer. And basically, again, detecting patients that have high risk of recurrence after the standard of care and escalating them with immunotherapy for curative intent. So the bottom line is how can we improve the efficiencies of cancer treatment, remove unnecessary surgeries, remove unnecessary treatments, and escalate when needed to create cure instead of just waiting for metastatic disease to come.
Could you tell me about the cancer treatment intelligence platform and how it works?
C2i is addressing the problem in a very interesting manner. So we are not just trying to be a diagnostic company. We're actually not trying to be a diagnostic company. We're trying to be the software platform behind, in the back end, to the next generation of evolution of digital diagnostic evolution across the globe. So we like to work with others, and we basically try to collaborate and to partner with some of the largest pharma companies, diagnostic companies, insurance companies around the globe, and allow them to deploy the technology locally. So our aim, basically, we have a platform that is GDPR and HIPAA compliant. We are actually very active in Europe, in Denmark, in France, in Belgium, in Switzerland. We have the platform is qualified for stringent qualification for cybersecurity, data privacy, medical device. We received the CE mark as a software as a medical device at the UK, European Union and Switzerland. We are already starting to do out-of-pocket testing in Europe and serve pharma companies. And besides that, we are very active in Israel, in India, in Singapore, Far East Asia. And again, as someone that came from Israel, one of the things that was important for me is really allow accessibility to everyone. And the understanding is that now that sequencing is becoming very cheap and cloud computing infrastructure are global, first of all, we expect to see high scale up on the number of samples. And from my side, my perspective, the bottleneck is going to be the logistics. So we need to allow large centers across the globe the ability to do it in-house, because if not, the logistics is not going to work.
I noticed in the press release it's mentioning how transformative this is. I wonder if you could tell me how this is going to change the oncology sector.
I'm very excited. And again, actually, I've been going through this journey with relatives on multiple different cancer types. So many of these unmet needs I've seen personally, and we lost people, relatives to this disease. There are many clinical decisions that are currently made almost blindly. And patients are suffering from two sides. One side is actually over-treatment of getting surgeries, treatments that are not working, suffering from side effects, disabilities for the rest of their life without any need. The other side is under-treatment, patients that have still active disease and are basically told to wait. A couple of examples that we are very excited about. C2i is very, very active in a field that's called organ preservation, especially in bladder cancer and rectal cancer. Patients are going through neoadjuvant chemo or neoadjuvant chemoradiation, and then through surgery. And the surgery is basically removal of the organ, removal of the bladder or the rectum. And obviously, these patients afterwards suffer from disability and reduction of quality of life for the rest of their life. Once the organ is removed, a lot of morbidities, disabilities, and so on. The sad truth is that after the surgery, pathology review is showing that for 30% of the patient, there is actually no need for the surgery. So it's called pathology complete response. These days, some of the pharma companies that we are working with, and actually AstraZeneca is public, but there are other agreements and other partnerships that are not public. Some of these are about, can we use immunotherapy in the neoadjuvant setting? The promise is that then basically the treatment, complete response is going to be much more effective. And maybe we can spare patient from surgery and leave the organ. And we need diagnostic that can basically guide it. So we need to know after treatment which patient have complete response and can go to surveillance, watch and wait. Which patient need the surgery or need more aggressive treatment. So that's one item that we are doing. Another, as I said, we are doing very large studies on basically testing patients after the start of care, after surgery, adjuvant treatment, and so on, detecting patients that have high risk of recurrence and escalating them. And again, the idea is to try to cure patients before it's a metastatic disease, and basically it's almost very low probability of cure. Another item that we are very excited about is actually pediatric cancer. And we are, from all of the companies in the field of residual disease monitoring, we are the only company that showed capability to do it on pediatric brain cancer. And we are also working to check it on pediatric sarcoma. Monitoring kids is very hard. So you need to do MRI. It's very expensive. It's very hard to put a kid in an MRI machine. And the sensitivity, accuracy usually is very low. My perspective is that not necessarily we need more drugs. We need to do more efficient use of the drug that we have. So we need to have very smart ways to guide to it. And that's what we try to do.
And I guess that would also have financial implications. If you're able to better streamline things, then there's a savings to the healthcare system.
So definitely the field of de-escalation of unnecessary treatments, unnecessary surgeries, de-escalation of immunotherapy, it has a huge financial advantage also for the insurance companies. And again, we need more evidence data. We are working for the clinical trial. We are doing the clinical trial with partners over the world. But that's going to really change the economy burden or the cost burden of oncology. It's all about like value-based treatment. If we can give treatment that provide value versus give treatment that only create side effects and not provide value and cost, that really is going to make a difference. Another thing that in the horizon and becoming very exciting, again, the sequencing cost is going down. So with the recent announcement from Illumina and new companies that are coming to the field that are also promising low-cost sequencing, I think in the near future, what we are going to see is that the molecular MRD, molecular residual disease monitoring, is going to become much cheaper than imaging. And that will completely change the way that people are looking on molecular monitoring, because it's not going to be only novelty test for specific indication that imaging does not work, people will start thinking about, okay, so do we actually need radiation? Because radiation creates cancer. So do we actually need radiation? Do we actually need imaging? Maybe we need imaging only at the point that we want to do surgery, because still you need the location and structure to do the surgery. But in places that we don't need surgery, maybe we can do blood testing. That's another change that is coming. It will take maybe a year, it will take 2 years, and so on, but it's change that is coming that really is going to change both the economy of cancer treatment and the patient journey, because blood testing can be done at home.
Could you tell me a little bit about where you're at with some of the trials that you're working on?
Last year, we published a result in conferences. Some of these are going to be peer-reviewed publication now on a lung cancer, colorectal cancer, bladder cancer, glioblastoma in adults, and brain cancer in kids. And I didn't say it, but the technology is actually, because we are building a patient-specific signature, I didn't go into all of the details, but the method is really customized pattern recognition. So we are, at the patient biopsy, we are taking a small piece, basically doing the sequencing, comprehensive profiling of the tissue, building a patient-specific tumor signature, and then detecting that in the blood. And it's a very different methodology from what other companies are using. It's more similar to things that are used for face recognition, radar theory, and so on. It's called match filter. And it's really basically doing a pattern recognition using all of the cancer features. So very, very sensitive, very accurate, very robust methods. That allows us to use the same algorithm across cancer types. So already, as I said, we have result on multiple different cancer types. I can say that now for the next ACR, we already have 3 submissions that include organ preservation and very, very early stage lung cancer detection and more colorectal data. And more things are coming for ASCO. So this year we are planning to release much more clinical data and publications. And the more exciting thing is that actually we are starting interventional clinical trials, meaning that patients in different locations in the world will actually start their treatment is going to be guided by C2i. And again, one of the first innovative centers that adopted it are Gustave Roussy in France, with a large study that we are planning and actually already pharma sponsored and on the way.
I guess the latest news was your collaboration with AstraZeneca. Could you tell me a little bit more about that and the deal?
Yeah, we are very excited about it because of 2 reasons. One is AstraZeneca actually did an amazing job to really benchmark and evaluate the technology. So they created their own validation set. So they actually sent samples to the C2i lab with multiple different cancer types that were included, including breast, lung, colorectal. The test patient set included different levels of tumor DNA, basically benchmarking our sensitivity to very, very low sensitivities. What we showed there in that study is that the assay sensitivity is very, very high, going down almost to 10⁻⁵, so meaning 1 tumor DNA molecules out of 100,000 of healthy DNA molecules. Very high accuracy on the tumor function estimation. As I said, we are actually counting the number of tumor DNA. So we actually can say what is the amount and monitor. So they validate the accuracy. And also one of the things that we show that is very different from other companies and correlated to the low amount of DNA that we need for assay is that we had 0 technical failure. So any sample, regardless of the DNA concentration and so on, every sample was processed and gave result. This is actually very different from the statistics of the other companies in the field. And that's one of the advantage of the C2i protocol. The next stage, and again, we are also excited about that decision that AstraZeneca made, is that they want to validate it in their own hands, in their own labs. And that's with a forward-looking view of really using that across the board, across solid cancer portfolio, across clinical trials and so on, and really generate a strong long-term partnership. And again, we are at the early stages. I'm very hopeful that this is what we are going to see, a very strong long-term partnership for drug development.
And it's not just AstraZeneca that you work with. I mean, you've also had some successful partnerships in India, China, in the US.
We haven't went to China yet. It's on our plan, but we are already a very, very tight relationship in Europe. Actually, we are most active in Europe. And as I said, we have CE-mark approval and we are starting clinical testing, out-of-pocket clinical testing in Europe. So we are very active in Denmark and with OncoDNA in Belgium and France and other locations. We are already at the process of validation and registering in Israel as a clinical product. We are in the process of launching a product in India with Carcinos, and in Singapore, Southeast Asia with Novogen. And again, all of that is coming from two aims for the company. One is on the pharma side, we want to be able to provide a global IT infrastructure and lab infrastructure for global clinical trial processing. And basically, again, if one of the pharma partner is coming and saying, I want to start a clinical trial in the US, Europe, Israel, and Singapore, so we already have local sites that are working with us that can process the samples. So we can provide local processing across the globe. And that's one of our aims, and uniform. All of these sites are working with exactly the same protocol. All of them are being validated by C2i. So one of the things that we are doing every partnership, we are actually validating the lab with our protocol, basically doing everything such as analytical, clinical, LDT validation. So uniform processing. And the second thing, beside the global processing for pharma, is also the clinical, again, allowing accessibility. If a patient from Europe, from Israel, from India, from Singapore, another location want to get the test, I want him to have ability to do it basically in-house, close to his home.
Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Again, re-emphasizing that the aim behind C2i is really to work with others and basically work with leading organizations across the globe to get this to commercialization. And I can tell that there are more news that are coming in from large organizations or companies in the US for commercializing this technology in the US and across the globe, and also many more pharma partnership, hopefully, and drug development opportunities.
Next, it's Jessica Robinson from Terrapinn, which hosts the Advanced Therapies Congress in London each year. Jessica is the project director of the event, which is coming up very soon, and she can tell us more about it. The first question then is if you could tell me a little bit about the event and its history.
Yeah, okay. So the Advanced Therapies Congress is the largest commercially focused ATMP event in Europe with a full-scale agenda and a full-scale exhibition. So we typically have about 1,000 attendees each year, over 1,000 attendees each year, mainly from pharma and biotech, but also from research, academia, regulatory bodies, investors, solution providers, and lots of startups as well. So we focus a lot on the delivery to patient, and we started off life as a small stem cell event 18 years ago in a hotel, and it was just back when stem cells were quite a new thing. So it was a stem cell meeting only. And as that evolved, I think there was about 200 people there in the beginning, and it was all researchers. It was all very early stage research. And as we grew and as the event evolved, as the years went by, it became more biotech companies, early stage biotechs, and we kind of grew with the industry. So now you have pharma companies involved. Big pharma companies are all in the cell and gene space. The stem cell field diverged and included cell therapies and gene therapies and CAR T, which is a relatively new thing, still been around for a while. But now the event encompasses all things under the ATMP umbrella or advanced therapies umbrella. So cell therapies, gene modified cell therapies, immunotherapy. And we look at every stage in the developmental pipeline, from early stage research to manufacturing through to commercialization and pricing and market access, which is where the key challenges are in the industry today.
Over the years, obviously, it's changed. What about the pandemic? How did that affect things?
Yeah, so that was an interesting time. We were due to do the event in March of 2020, so that was a great time for us. We all know what happened. We originally postponed the event for a few months, I think, and then it became very clear that we weren't going to be able to meet in person for a while. So we did what lots of other people did, and we made a virtual event. We pivoted, we tried out loads of different kinds of software, and we did a virtual event in September of 2020. We were the first one in our company to do it, so that was a bit scary, but we ended up making it work. And then we did another event in April of 2021. By then we'd gotten so good at doing virtual events, so I think we managed to weather the storm of the pandemic and carried it off. We had the biggest event that we've ever had, with 2,000 people showing up online virtually. And then when it got to the end of 2021, we decided to do a mini supplementary in-person event, like a bonus one, and we were a bit optimistic. I think we were it's going to be fine by October 2021, but we still got about 400 people from the UK. A few people managed to travel from the US, but by the time it got to the full-scale in-person event last year, we had over 1,000 people there, even with a few travel bans in place. So yeah, it's been an interesting couple of years, but we managed to get some really good virtual event software in place. We did a webinar series. We ran 15 webinars for people virtually. It meant that we tried a lot of new things as well in terms of formats, and we learned a lot. But I think people are a bit sick of virtual meetings now, and we're really excited to do a fully in-person event again this year.
And is it attracting people from all around the world?
Yes, we do have. I mean, in last year's event, we had a lot of US people attending. There were still some travel bans. We had a lot of UK and European people. Typically, before the pandemic, we'd have a totally global audience. So we'd have 30% of people from the UK, 30% from Europe, 30% from the US, and 10% from Asia Pacific. We're still kind of seeing those numbers. Not quite those numbers, but kind of a drift back to having more US, and we're hoping some people from Asia for this year's event. So it's getting back there.
And where does it take place?
It takes place at the ExCeL in London, the 14th to the 15th of March.
All right. Has it always, the in-person one, has it always been in London?
It has actually, yeah, it has always been in London. We started off in a hotel in Westminster, I think it was. It was in central London. And then we moved to the BDC, and that's when I started working on the event. It was in the Business Design Centre in Islington, and the event at the ExCeL last year was our first full-scale event at the ExCeL. We also had our little bonus one in the ExCeL the year before.
All right. And what kind of people come to this? Is it right across the board?
Yes, so it's mainly biotech and pharma companies, or people who are developing cell and gene therapies. So that's mainly who our kind of audience are. But we also have quite a lot of researchers and academics from universities and research institutes. We bring together over 100 startups every year. So we get 100 startup companies and quite a few investors who are looking at those startups. We also get regulatory bodies and payers and HTAs who are talking about the pricing and market access side, and a fair few solution providers as well. So CMOs, CROs, people who sort of build and make the equipment and kind of all the things that these cell and gene therapy developers need to use to do their jobs.
And could you give me some details on the kind of the format? Is it just all presentations, or are there meetings? Is there exhibitors?
Yeah, there's a good balance of conference sessions. So we start the day with keynotes, opening keynote sessions, a couple of presentations and panels from the keynote speakers. Then we'll have a coffee break and a roundtable discussion. So we have 25 different breakout roundtable discussions. We'll have lunch, and then we'll split into 9 different conference tracks. So there's a lot of different sort of topics to choose from. Like I said earlier, we look across the developmental pipeline from early stage research all the way through to patient delivery. So those tracks look at pricing and market access, gene modified cell therapy, gene therapy, cell therapy manufacturing, viral vector manufacturing, clinical trials and supply chain, innovation, which is like the kind of research and early stage technologies, and then also a startup theatre where our startups do their pitches and company presentations as well. And it's a mixture of presentations and panel discussions and networking. So we'll have lots of networking breaks throughout the day, and on day one we have a networking drinks reception as well.
How do people register for this?
Oh, they can just go onto our website. There is an early bird taking place this week, so register before Friday, before prices go up. There is a standard price and a special price for academics and startups and non-profits.
Are there going to be any companies making announcements at the... Not that you can tell me what the announcements are, but are there going to be any announcements made?
Oh, yes, there are bound to be a lot. More than I could probably mention. I could probably tell you who the keynote speakers are. There's tons and tons of companies that are going to be giving presentations. I mean, the key speakers are Bruce Levine from University of Pennsylvania. He's going to be talking about translating innovation from academia to industry. We've got some regulators talking about revision of ATMP legislation, Peter Marks from the FDA and Shinichi Okudaira from the Japanese regulator PMDA going to be on a panel. Nusrat Ghani, who's the Minister of State for Industry and Investment Security, who's responsible for life sciences in the UK, and she's going to be giving a presentation. And there's going to be lots of company announcements as well.
One of the partners of the Advanced Therapies Congress is BioAlps, the life science cluster for Western Switzerland. And as luck would have it, that's the next interview. Magali Bischof is the Secretary General of BioAlps, and she can tell us all about the organisation.
No, indeed, with pleasure. So the BioAlps Association was founded in 2003 by the academic institutions in Western Switzerland. The aim was to have the one regional representative from academia who would be able to show and promote all the different projects that were coming from the different academic institutions within life sciences. And then in 2008, under the new regional policy, the cantons and the federal government, so the 7 cantons of the western part of Switzerland and the State Secretariat for Economic Affairs wanted to put in place an economic development strategy and focus on 4 key tech pillars, life sciences being one of them. So they decided to mandate the BioAlps Association, which was already pre-existing, to lead the development of this sector. And so our mission is quite simple, is to, as I said, promote really what is taking place in the region, whether it be innovation and science and research from academia, but also from industry, and promote it on a regional, national, and international level. And we also wish to foster synergies and partnership creation between academia and industry, but also among industry. The tools that we have to put this in place are basically our communication tools, so our websites, our newsletter and social media, but also different events. So we have 4 BioAlps events, the BioAlps Networking Day, we have deep dive events, we also have 4 to 6 and Innovators Connect, but we also partner with other events, whether it be in the region or on a national level, and we're also present at different trade shows.
How many members do you have and what sectors are covered?
So we have 2 types of members. We have institutional members that are the members that basically support and finance us. So in these members, we have currently 14 academic institutions and the 7 cantons. And then we also have what we call affiliated members, which are all the key players that are within life sciences and that are based in our region. So basically, as soon as an organization, whether it be a research center or a startup or a multinational, sets up within our region and that they have an activity linked to innovation in life sciences, then they're automatically affiliated to our network. Currently, we list about 1,340 different players in our region. And the areas that we cover that we link to the life sciences umbrella are biotech, medtech, digital health, pharma, nutrition, and cosmetics. So it's quite broad.
You said there are a lot of members. Is it easy to manage all of that, especially considering they're all in such varied sectors? I know it's all within science, but there's quite a bit of variation there.
Yeah, the number isn't so much the issue. It is more the complexity and the diversity linked to our ecosystem, but it's also what makes it a strong ecosystem. I think the diversity within our health valley is really what makes it special. It actually, I believe, helps to foster innovation and partnerships, the fact that there is this level of diversity. But it's true that obviously there are some key elements and key principles that are linked to life sciences in general. But obviously, when you speak to a medtech or a biotech, it's not going to be the same conversation. They don't have the same outlook, the same perspectives. Timelines are very different. So we try to use this understanding we have of our ecosystem to tailor the services that we provide, or try and support them as well as we can.
And so as far as the members of the group that you have, or the organization, what are the benefits for being a member?
So it's really the visibility, because any affiliated member can send us, news and events, and we're happy to share this information. So we're kind of a microphone for our region in many ways, but also the connection. So they have access to the network through us. So we are a kind of an entry point to the network. So we have a lot of individuals and companies, or sometimes professors that will come to us because they're looking to partner with other companies or other players within the region. And because we have this knowledge of the ecosystem, we're happy to share, obviously, with them. And we can provide this information and support this growth and the synergies.
On your website, you have quite a lot of events listed there. I wonder if you could tell me about some of the events that you do.
We do have a very large amount of events. There are some events for which we just do the promotion. So we're not necessarily involved in any other way than communicating about them, because it's important for our ecosystem to know what's out there and to see any opportunities that would fit their strategy or their needs. We have, as I mentioned before, BioAlps formats. So the BioAlps Networking Day, which is not currently yet on our website, but is our annual event. So it's our yearly gathering of the life sciences community from Western Switzerland. We have about 250, 300 participants, and we have a conference, but we also have a networking area with an exhibition for sponsors. This year, the event will take place on the 9th of November in Geneva at the campus Biotech. And the themes change every year. This year, it will be personalized medicine and digital health. And we also change location every year. So we try to cover the region. So that's really our main event. We also have the 4 to 6 events, which are company visits. In December, we went to the BioArc in Visp, where we had a presentation from BioArc, but we also had a presentation from Lonza and their training center. So the participants had access to the presentation, but we were also able to try the virtual reality headsets to see how they were training and adapting and optimizing their training modules to be able to train lab technicians and try and make this process a lot faster and also maybe a bit more interactive. That was really quite fun. And we have a 4-6 next week at the Biotech as well. So the aim is to have a presentation, a visit of the facilities. We've been to some pharma and biotech companies too, so it's always really quite interesting. The other types of formats we have are the deep dive events. And this is where we have one partner and we choose a topic with this partner, and then we invite other key experts from the region to really try and dig deeper into the topic. Last event we had was a deep dive into quantified self. So we tried to understand the links with obviously the data monitoring, analysis, and also the technology behind it. So the micro and nanotechnologies that were linked to it, and obviously all the other elements that could be brought forth by the different experts from the region. And we also have another format, which is the Innovators Connect event. And there, some companies come to us because they're looking to identify partners within the region that they can work with. So we do a scouting within our database, and we reach out to our different partners in the region to identify potential technologies that could be useful for them. And then we organize a tailored event around that. So we have presentations from these research projects or startups, and obviously from the company itself. So those are really the BioAlps events, but we're also, as I mentioned before, present on trade shows and other events in the region for which we partner.
And the region that you're in, is it a growing sector?
Yes, it definitely is. It's constantly evolving and definitely extremely dynamic. If we look at the investment that was made within the region for the startups on the startup scene, we've now gone beyond last year, which is good to see that there's an evolution in the right direction. There was a bit of a dip in 2019, but we're not yet back on track with 2018, but it depends. When you have really big financing rounds that happen in some years, it kind of tweaks the data. But yes, no, definitely the sector is constantly growing, and there's also been an evolution in the way that the dynamic is taking place within the ecosystem, because we have more and more partnerships. So we see that it's not only new startups, but it's also a lot of the companies now partner with each other to foster innovation. So I think on the innovation side, it's definitely growing. And then in terms of number of companies also, but maybe not at the same scale.
Are there sort of hubs or parts of the communities? Like, is there a specific part of Geneva that houses a lot of biotech companies?
Yes, in the region, obviously, every canton has their focus and their strategy, but every canton you will find an innovation hub, and in which you will always have a life sciences part. So in Geneva, you'll have the FONGIT, for example, which is the for l'innovation technologique in Geneva. It's really the startup incubator, but you also have the campus biotech, which is obviously more of a research hub in neurotech and neurobiology. So there are quite a few hubs here. You also have in Lausanne and in the canton of Vaud, you have the Biopole, which is a huge community in life sciences and about to become the main life sciences community in Switzerland, because it's constantly growing and it's growing fast. In Valais, you also have the BioArc that I was mentioning before. So that's definitely the life sciences hub. In Neuchâtel, there's the CSCM, which is a research center that do a lot in digital health and also medtech and wearables. And then there's the Micro City, which is also an innovation hub, but it's as focused on life sciences, but they're developing a hub and an initiative in diagnostics mainly. So that will be their main focus. And then in Fribourg, you have the FryUp. In Jura, you have a new medtech accelerator as well. And in Bern, you have the CITEM Insel, which is linked to the University of Bern and to the university hospital, the Inselspital. So every canton will have a hub. So we work very closely with them, obviously, between academic institutions, these hubs. It's important to not double the work, make sure that what there are maximum synergies also among us, that we collaborate as much as possible, because there's a lot that can be done, and I think there's a lot there is being done, but it's good for us to try and focus and to work together as much as possible.
Are there academic institutions in each of those areas that you were mentioning?
Yes, definitely. So there's a cantonal university. Within the region, there are 3 university hospitals, 2 of which are actually part of the top 10 worldwide. So that's huge in terms of research and knowledge for our region. And there's also the PFL that has different hubs in different cantons as well, which is the Polytechnical School of Lausanne. We also have the University of Applied Sciences, which is a different branch of the universities here in Switzerland. And they have a lot more applied curriculums and science. So they do also a lot of partnerships with companies and then all the different research institutions. So it's really quite broad. We have about 67 academic and research institutions.
Yeah, that's a lot. And is there a lot of government support, whether that's financial or otherwise?
Yes, so all of these hubs that I was mentioning are most of them are all supported in some way by the cantons and by the government. Sometimes the support can be a bit hidden because, for example, BioAlps is definitely supported by the cantons. So all these different initiatives that support this ecosystem are actually a lot of them from government or government financed, but there are also some financial and expertise support mechanisms such as InnoSuisse and Bridge. So they all have very different schemes, but they also support the creation of partnerships between academia and industry. So if you have different projects that combine industry and academia, you can also have access to some financing and some expertise through different coaches.
And within Switzerland, obviously, there are other places like Zurich and Basel. Are there relationships with those other regions as well?
Yes, so we don't have any established partnerships per se, but we're always very happy to share news and about their events. For example, in Basel, there's obviously the Day One initiative. And so we're very happy to share this news with our ecosystem because it can be very useful for our members. And the aim is, we are quite a small team at BioAlps, but the aim is to be able to foster more synergies with them and try and strengthen these collaborations with the surrounding ecosystems, but also beyond. At the different trade shows, we also seem to connect a lot. Sometimes the further you go away from your home, the more you connect with neighbors, it seems. But it's also a good way to see what synergies we can have and how we can collaborate, because obviously our ecosystem members, they don't have any boundaries in terms of their activity, and it's important for us to see what works for them and what is good for them.
And amazingly, to keep the connections going, we're staying in Switzerland to talk to Tobias Werk, CEO of Bionter. The company is a supplier of analytical testing solutions to support pharma companies getting their drugs faster and more safely onto the market. And so Tobias can tell us more.
Bionter is a startup founded in 2020. And we at Bionter, we revolutionize analytical testing in the biotech sector by innovating and tailoring technology to the needs of the pharmaceutical industry. So with the solutions we create, biotech companies can develop their drugs faster and ensure highest quality. Why are we doing it? Most important thing, our work allows us to make an important contribution to patient safety and in turn to improve people's health. This is also in our statement, in our vision and mission statement.
And the origin of the company itself, how did that come about, the idea of founding Bionter?
Well, I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for more than a decade, in several positions, mostly R&D of biotech. My heart was always beating faster when I was able to create ideas for optimizing analytical testing within the drug development process. And since I did not know anyone who could bring these ideas to the market, it was in the end up to me to do it myself.
What are the challenges, I guess, of being a founder of a relatively new company?
This is quite easy. So at an initial phase of a startup, resources are very limited. That means you cannot work exclusively strength-oriented. It was challenging for me to have a full-time job and at the same time being responsible for everything at Bionter, meaning from financing, HR, R&D, everything, from customer relationship management to developing the prototype, while also remaining a caring father and husband.
That's always a challenge, yeah. I know the feeling. What do you find the most rewarding aspects of leading a company?
I never regret the day that I founded Bionter, because you can build an organization with a true purpose and a unique collaborative spirit. And it's much easier to transform an organization than transforming an organization that is already a culture in place.
Have you learned any important lessons from being a founder of a company?
To be courageous, I would say. For instance, it took a lot of courage for me to found Bionter, although I already had a great job. I was in pharma a very long time. Nevertheless, it's, of course, fulfilling on a completely different level. And I do work now in this kind of way, and I'm very grateful to have taken this decision.
How long did it take you to make that decision? I mean, was it sort of I'm going to do this now, or did it take a long time for you to actually make that jump?
It took a very long time for me. I think it's 4 or 5 years, where I was always playing in my mind, well, someone should do it. Someone should. Why is nobody doing it? And then waited so long and then finally made the leap.
In terms of advice for others, or helping others, what would you say is the best advice that you ever received?
I would say I got the best advice from my wife. She advised me to mark my calendar with a recurring meeting to care for myself, because she meant only by caring for myself I can also care for my team and my family.
I guess you've launched a new product recently. I wonder if you could tell us about that and who it helps and how it helps.
Imagine many injectable drugs, they contain particles, and those particles can be critical for patient safety. For example, they can occlude blood vessels or induce an immune response. The available particle counters consume the precious drug product during the testing. So this is why we developed Eve. This is a particle counter that does not destroy the sample. And this actually opens opportunities for the user. In an earlier drug development setting, they never have enough material. So you can drastically reduce the amount of drug needed for your routine testing using the sample for other analytical endpoints as well. In a later phase development setup where you typically have enough material, you start to chase the needle in the haystack. So we have a probabilistic event in one of the vials, one of the containers is our particles, and then the others are not. So now, if it's not destroying the sample, you can use the identical sample, and now for particle identification and characterization to find and eliminate the root cause.
What have been the key achievements that you've noted to date?
The key achievement for me has been the positive customer feedback on our technology that proves that we have innovated a solution to a real problem. And I'm proud that we managed to develop, prototype, and manufacture a high-quality product in a very lean way within just 2 years. We, of course, received various awards and grants during that short period of time, and it seems relevant. People in the industry are becoming aware of Bionter and also recognize its potential.
2 years is pretty quick. How have you built your team in that short time?
In my opinion, the initial team selection is the most crucial and critical in the success of a startup. Thus, I took my time, really took a very long time, shared ideas with my board, and was looking for people with a purpose in line with our company's purpose. At the same time, I made sure that these team members I'm looking for had strength in areas where I didn't have any, so that we are more complementing each other and become a diverse, strengths-oriented team.
So what are you most excited about right now?
Of course, with our first product on the market. and customer feedback shows us that we are on the right track.
What's the next 12 to 18 months look like, I guess?
So I think that the development of drug product goes more and more to smaller batches, more high-priced drug product in biologics, or you also cell and gene therapy, etc. So this is a place where you really need key analytical technologies that assure the quality of the product.
Now it's to JLL and Travis McCready. Hi Travis, and a belated Happy New Year, and good to have you back.
Hey Jim, a belated Happy New Year to you and yours. After a holiday hiatus, I am back with a pep in my step. And notwithstanding the state of the markets and the life sciences sector being in a bit of a recalibration, I find a cause for optimism. This past week, I had the pleasure of spending time immersed in the world of cell therapy biomanufacturing. We've talked on this podcast before about manufacturing from the standpoint of the need for additional capacity, but frankly, additional capacity will not answer cell therapy's three fundamental challenges: efficiency, efficacy, and cost. Indeed, too many cell therapy manufacturing processes are simply scaled-out versions of benchtop activities researchers used in discovery. Put simply, lack of innovation, bringing to market and adoption of new underlying manufacturing equipment and technologies remain significant concerns worldwide for the entire cell therapy modality. Addressing challenges endemic to cell therapy like donor and cell heterogeneity, cell sorting, viral vector production and reliance, transduction efficiency, and in-process and endpoint critical quality attributes are all technical challenges that require a unique novel set of technical solutions as of yet brought to market. But a joint initiative between MIT and a confederacy of Singapore-based research institutions and clinics seeks to tackle these challenges head on. Dubbed SmartCamp, CAMP being short for Critical Analytics for Manufacturing Personalized Medicine, this interdisciplinary initiative is laser-focused on improving patients' lives by investing in better ways to produce living cells as medicine delivered to humans. Most research or translational initiatives invest in the act of discovering novel regenerative therapies for particular diseases or conditions. Along the way, the techniques, equipment, or processes used have not evolved, leading to errors in reproducibility, unpredictable efficacy, and challenges with manufacturability that ultimately can be a barrier to regulatory approval or cause for adverse regulatory review. The solution? Assemble a world-class team of biologists, engineers, data scientists, and manufacturing specialists to rethink the process from start to finish, from the moment cells are harvested from the patient to the moment modified living cells are re-administered. Think of so-called lean manufacturing, but instead of making automobiles, we're talking about helping to make cell therapies. What's the scale of the challenge that an initiative like SmartCamp seeks to address? As of the end of 2022, there were some 500 plus clinical trials worldwide for CAR T treatments alone. For the handful of CAR T drugs that have made it through regulatory review and on to commercialization, the average cost of these drugs is approximately $500,000, 70% of which can be attributed to two factors: capital expenditures, including building infrastructure, equipment, and the like, and lentiviral production. A focus on manufacturing technology development could significantly drive down the cost of both, an unquestionable aspiration if we are to make cell therapies more widely available worldwide. There are predictions abound for what 2023 will bring for the life sciences industry, whether we're talking regulatory, financing, infrastructure, or new companies and modalities. I look forward to it all, and we will cover it all in future podcasts. But manufacturing technology development and initiatives like SmartCamp, they might not find themselves an A-lister alongside anti-aging technology or the impact of rising cost of debt on lab construction. It's rewarding nonetheless to know that there are scientists and technologists working to solve the foundational structural barriers to this industry's growth, regardless of economic cycle. Manufacturing and supply chain is one such barrier, so kudos to Singapore and MIT for leading the innovation charge. Thanks, Jim, and till next time, I look forward to our next time and our next conversation.
Thanks, Travis. We'll hopefully catch up with you again next week. Travis McCready is the leader of JLL's Life Science Markets Advisory Practice in the Americas, working closely with the global and scaling life sciences companies, developers and investors to achieve breakthroughs. He has more than 25 years of experience spearheading successful ventures related to technology and innovation, including as president and CEO of a $1.6 billion life sciences funding agency. And that is it for another podcast. No idea who we will have next week, but there will be some from the Facilitate Advanced Therapies Week in Miami Beach, where the temperature was in the high 20s Celsius, and I'm not jealous. It's actually a good time of year when the humidity isn't quite so high. I do remember driving through Miami Beach once, expecting that driving on the A1A would give me beautiful views of the water on both sides. But no, buildings on both sides. No sign of the sea. I could have been anywhere. Well, other than the fact it was definitely Florida. And so just another reminder that this podcast was sponsored by Bionter. Bionter is a Swiss-based premier supplier of analytical testing solutions to support pharma companies to bring drugs faster and safer onto the market. Their first product is a fully automated particle testing device for parenteral drug applications that is cost-efficient and compliant with current regulations. To find out more, go to www.bionter.com. Anyway, thanks a lot for joining us this week, and I hope that wherever in the world you are, you have a great week ahead. Take care and join us next time for another Beyond Biotech.